job last time these two teams met down in San Antonio.
Very selective as George goes right after.
And I think, 19,000 agree with me.
George takes the bump and he's put together a great year. George got behind him there and an easy.
The Thunder was just saying, all right, whatever you try to do, we can do it right back. A little post-up pass over the top.
George right across the baseline, and Ferguson drains the triple. Russell Westbrook with the 7 rebounds and 4 assists, now getting out after the steal and the finish of that out to Adams. George left open. He got 2 hands.
And now you want to play with pace. Don't allow the Spurs to set up their defense.
Again for the lead. And
Westbrook has posted 2 career triple-doubles in this building. Paul George shakes Herter and delivers. Oh, one that Billy Donovan is not enjoying. Paul George for 3.
It looked like a lob to me.
Was the fact that Atlanta did not turn the ball over that much. Ball 121 to 109. Paul George from the corner with Hamilton there, and it's a 3. Adams outlets to Paul George. Drills the 3. Time.
A 9-0 advantage. They can do it again right here, and they do. So that's a 3-pointer for Russell Westbrook. George gets the roll. Off the rebound, it's kept alive. George for 3. In the corner. Rick Walton was in trouble with the possibility of a midseason change. This is Paul George. The Warriors went 39-4 under Rick Ferguson, who has been on fire. 3 minutes left in the half. George, Terrence, Ferguson, Marv Albert, Chris Webber, Ali LaForce. That is his 3rd from 3-point land. Here's George. Here's Paul points. Back tap by Adams, so they keep it alive. George for the deep 3. Yes! George, West counts as the foul. He got the call. Get it off as he was fouled.
Look at that Laker bench taking responsibility. And George taking responsibility.
Advantage if the playoffs began this afternoon. Paul George with a lot of sauce and sizzle on that mid-range jump shot. Paul George having a career year. Almost 27 points per. Adams on the lob!
The best we have in the league in rolling into the paint and either catching the ball or tapping the ball.
And another.
You got an advantage here now. He tried too big of a pass.
A little room service for Paul George and showtime.
When you're coaching, that's really upsetting. Mainly because in that area, and then naturally Paul George has not come across half court yet, and it ends up in a lane.
Turning quickly at the other end. Sixers back up by 2. George with the step back 3. Got it!
Well, they like we
to Adams.
Yeah, they wanted to discontinue there.
For the lead, Paul George! Right there when they want him.
We were looking for him, okay? They got to get him involved. I mean, they got to try to do something so he gets some looks.
The 3 ball. Another possession out to Westbrook. The lob. George finishing at the other end.
Not only does he miss the shot.
In total steals. Now with the 3. And he's trying to
he's answering.
Switching. Paul George has to get a touch at some point, and he does. The 3 ball quickly. Got it! And 1! My George! Paul on the job! Incredible!
That was an incredibly great shot.
Clutch. Paul George now with 30 points.
And remember, I was worried about him early on, in the second half.
He's in double digits in bounds. He's 13th in the rebounding department in the entire league. Paul, yes, counted and the foul as Knox picks up his first.
George shaking up Cornette.
And knocks down the jumper.
4-point play, last second to seal the deal in that game.
George in rhythm nails the 3-pointer. He's 3 for 3 already.
George feasting with the jumper.
Paul George scoots inside and
utility by Sonia.
George will shake and bake. Nails the 3-pointer as he 20. And we're just over 9 minutes into the game. Nice pass from George to Noel, and the Knicks defense is non-existent. Vale guarding Paul George. fires over to Schroeder, and Schroeder last in three-point field goal percentage.
Westbrook has struggled and averages a triple-double.
And come right back.
This is why teams always finish the half quarter with the flurry against the Knicks. The last 2 minutes, they allow teams to run amok.
George gets inside. Nice move to the basket from George.
Timely hooping this afternoon by George.
And George banks it home. Hardaway took a shot in the face.
Yep. Pace of the game. And
26 points in 23 minutes. He's hit 4 threes.
And that's been a problem all season for the Knicks, giving up 116 points a game.
Ferguson. First offensive possession of the night for the Thunder, and it's George going to work. And he picks. The entire NBA has to figure out Lillard and McCollum, one of the highest scoring duos in the NBA from the guard position, is Paul George. Drains it from downtown. Already with 7 early points for the Thunder here in the first. George on the step back. Boy, that's a tough shot. We open up quarter number 2. George, first shot, that's good. George open for 3 on the step back and free safety and picks off the pass. Patterson checks the tape.
Russ wasn't really comfortable taking that shot from distance just then.
George got down low, dumps it up, Adams! George slithering, bounces, fades in, count it to go! Throws it right in the hands of Ferguson, and George, behind everybody, has to track it down. Lays it up and in. Cullum had it knocked away and a steal by George. George got away from everybody and detonates at the rim. Fun one, it's been a tight one. There's a pass, got deflected by Paul George. Hip to hip with Nurkic, all the way to the rim, and he scores. Ball batted around, it's George, takes it away, sends it up the floor to Westbrook, and Westbrook this time.
Defensive rebounding. We talked about that as one of the keys to the ball game is Paul George.
Their defensive player, Jeremy Grant, forced that miss. George steps into the 3, 2 in a row. Team came. Westbrook finds a wide open George, aims, fires, makes it 3 for 3. How about Nader? All the way, Sword! Thanks to the tap by Steven Adams to keep that ball loose. Slingshot over to Ferguson.
That's by Steven Adams, not letting him get to the rim and force him into a tough shot.
Grant charging down the lane.
That can match his intensity and then have the stats to support it. I mean, just mind-boggling. I'm more impressed with that 24 assists on 30 made field goals. Paul George all the way to the rim. On the defensive end.
George gonna have to make a move here with the shot clock winding down. Tough step back 3, high arching. It was like the gateway arch, and it's
Our starter plays like that.
George. Catch, fire 3, count it. And I'm up.
Wide open shot by Holiday. He normally makes that shot.
Just 1 out of 6 loose ball.
That's just great hustle.
Trying to shed Solomon Hill. Finally does. Off the pass. And cranks.
50, 40, 90 pace. 50% shooting from the field, 40 from 3. There's Paul George from out.
15% of his attempts come from out there, Dave.
George tracks down the loose ball, catch and fire, and he buries.
Let that be the conversation. I get it. Our job is to wonder about where he's going to be, but for this particular instance, this is just about respect for a teammate.
Paul George earning respect from the. George, sweet move going behind the back and burying the 3. We're not shooting the ball well from 3, but that's changed. It's just their defense turned it over.
But they're making him play in a crowd, Dave, which is exactly what you want to do.
Get 2 or 3 guys on him. George smokes the net on another 3. Thunder have the toughest remaining schedule in the NBA. Deep attempt, good for George. He's got 5-3. 5 for the Thunder. George, it's good. So smooth.
That's a good
2-point basket of the game. George for 3. Wow. And somehow he's still walking around with 1 shoot. Paul George hits a 3. George with 27. That's a. George, beautiful dribble, drives the paint, hangs, and gets the bounce. He's got. Here's George, puts it on the floor, gets past 2 guys, stuffs it on the freak. George, they double him on the catch. Timer at 5. Against Brogdon, puts it up, hits it. 34 for Paul George.
Coming in after that big win on Sunday night against the Bucks. George goes right at Isaac, able to finish over. George gets into his move and knocks down the shot. Paul George.
On Antetokounmpo on Sunday afternoon, they were right at the rim.
One of the best shot blockers is Paul George. Lines up another tier as George wants to get out of the break. Goes right at Isaac, and how about that? Pick was one of the top recruits coming out of high school. George, oh, he leaned into it. Didn't matter.
He shot it early in the shot clock as well. Thunder will take that.
How many times have we seen that this year? Quarter for the Magic. As George slips around the screen, takes the bump, counted in the Frenchman. George left open in transition and capitalizes. As Isaac now switched up on PG. Trying to make the move. How about the spin move? Right off the glass. Question we've been asking all season long. How do you defend Paul George? This time, Isaac trying to keep him in front. George takes the bump. Got it to drop and the foul. Well, the Magic just continue to take threes. And George continues to find his way. Saves it out of bounds. Finds George knifing down the lane in the scoop. Gives the shot clock a little bit of a nod. Fights his way down the lane. And scoop. George again. Picked up by Fournier. And Paul George. George, first three of the night. That's good. Paul.
Whiteside by all the blue shirts.
George again on the drive. That's going to be the continue.
Bait there, Russ.
Grant finds George slashing to the rim and another fit. In the reverse, no good by Johnson. As George wants to get out. He has Winslow to beat, and he does beat him, and another fit. Now 4 rebounds. George steps into the three. Make it 2 for Paul. George already with 13 here in the first quarter. Can add to it. Lines up the three, and right down the pipe, Paul George. Knock another erase shot by Nerlens Noel, his third block of the night. And George, with some space, takes advantage and buries the three. Good contest there, Jeremy Grant on Johnson. Westbrook feeds it over to George. Aims, fires, and hits. Second three of the first half. Time for the Thunder here. Westbrook goes behind his back. Finds George slashing all the way to the rim. Johnson from behind. George again. Maybe another reload. Here we go. That one's good.
Seeing stranger things,
Well,
right?
he mistimed the
say
toss,
that.
though.
No, how about?
Kind of threw everybody off. Just out of nowhere, he finally fired it up and take on the Celtics. George dancing, firing, and connecting that up. George wants another three. Oh my goodness, Paul George just cannot miss. Wild drive there by Waiters. 17-point lead. George pulls up and hits. Right at his season average. Came in averaging about 17 a game. Can George add to the record? He can. Another three.
Now they're both shooting the three at between 36 and 38%.
Paul George with one of some interesting comments with us earlier when he talked about how he's slowed down just a little bit this year, not getting caught up.
And once he's on my shoulder, and I'm just going to move him out because of upper body strength.
10 seconds to go. George 3 of 8 from the field here in the first quarter. Kyrie taking on the defensive challenge. Paul George just that much better. George weaving through traffic for the two-handed slam.
But they're 5 for 9 today in the three ball.
Paul George with the step back made a little bit of space, just like you showed at the show.
Also, he's one of our best defenders because if you notice, he was on George early.
And speaking of George, it's Tatum. Straightaway three.
Whoa.
Wet.
Whoa. We're raining threes. Remember now, Boston is 3rd in makes and 3rd in attempts on offensive foul.
Russell Westbrook has 5 consecutive triple-doubles coming into the game today. So far, is 6 rebounds short of a 6th straight. Diallo! George off the screen. It fires quick. You feel?
That's quite an achievement. That's a nice move by Paul George. Wow. Just attack that lead with the basketball.
George in the corner off the inbounds pass, and he knocks down the three. But if I'm the Pelicans, and George lines it up from downtown.
That's the talk of the NBA right now. Paul George lines up another three. He says, hello, Vucevic. I got back to
Some heavy artillery starting to be exchanged as the Thunder start to heat up from downtown. Back-to-back threes by Paul George. Quick trigger three. Walled off for the rebound.
That's two possessions there by the Magic, but you forced them into a short shot clock.
George, again, contact, and he buries the three. He just lost it.
Well, Russell Westbrook helped him on that.
The lob, back to point lead for the Magic. George, one-on-one, what a three. One of the three and got the three. He's up with another steal. He leads the NBA in total steals. 10-point Thunder lead. George knifing down the lane. Oh, the nifty move on the left hand.
Buzzing with updates as Adams wins the tip. First shot is knocked down. To the younger Jackson. Catch fire three. George, no good. Adams falling to the floor. The reload. That's good. Well, the Thunder trimmed the deficit down to three. Westbrook blows by Watanabe. Sets it up as George tees. And the need for speed continues. Finds the open man. What a play. Westbrook finds his run. 10-2. George handled the face from Washburn. Finally, enough jab steps to...
I like what you did. The defense did his job in that third quarter.
George flares up. As Noel has to save that pass. Setting up another George three. And he bombs away.
By the Rockets getting Kenneth Faried. Paul George for three. That's good. George again, another three. George, two. Good defense, too. George finds Steven Adams. Adams fumbles it, lost it. Good defense from Steven Adams. George drives and finishes. It's down. Austin Rivers in, as is Iman Shumpert. Shumpert doing his first game with the Rockets after being acquired from Sacramento.
Guard the three-line better. He said James Harden and the step-back threes they can deal with, but we've got to...
Second time making the play. George goes right at P.J. Tucker. Shot's good and one. Westbrook comes in and takes it right out of his hands. Throws it ahead to George. George slams it home.
Turnovers. Good collapse on the ball by Westbrook, and then George running for layups. But I have to say, I'm one of those guys who find it at times monotonous.
4 on the 24, George. Count it, and the foul. Chance for a 4-point play. George now with 30 points his own. They were down by as many as 26. And he's got free throws coming up. A chance to cut it to 6.
Got to phase it up.
What do you got to get back to in this fourth?
Well, now Rockets responded to an OKC run with one of their own. George for three. Paul George now with...
Those teams will be in action here tonight as George slips his way.
Trailblazers as well. Something the Thunder have been able to do with them.
Well, the Western Conference Player of the Week, Paul George, making another crafty, but that time the Thunder defense steps up and creates the deflection. George turns on the speed all the way to the rim as he blows right.
Deflection by Terrence Ferguson.
C.J. McCollum so dangerous on the offensive end. George, a series of moves. Oh my, Paul George just continues his excellent stretch. Lines up about this young rookie. Oh, George trying to slither down low. Triple team somehow skirts free with the reverse. How did he get free? He's so slick inside. Now George had the feet set and drains home another three.
I do that in my church league. I'd average about 50 a game.
Boy, he just muscled his way up through the contact of Paul George is starting to explode again. George again gets by two. Finds the open man. It's Burton at the gun. They're returning home here against the Portland Trailblazers. A big reason why is the man with the basketball who just cannot be slowed down. There is no sit down.
And you like that action.
George, why not? Portland turns it over. Now Burton again. Oh, he's stuck with the play.
Kids having fun.
George reading the defensive player, flared out on Aminu, takes the... George wants the three, got the few that's actually shooting it well for the Blazers. George, though, catches the defense off guard and makes it pay.
Okay, how do you do that on
size there? The contest at the rim. And George leaking out behind the defense and scores. Well, it's easy. easy to underappreciate the career of Wilt Chamberlain. It's not hard from George. Capping a big night here for the Thunder. George, the hesitation, takes the bump, and it drops in.
Russell Westbrook is just the assist, his rebounding ability. He's defending at a higher level. Ooh, that's a tough shot. Defense by George, though. Never gave up on the play and really made Holiday work for that.
George knocks down a three all the way in for the layup. And a quick burst here for Oklahoma City. The pass, Noel finishes. Coming to the end of the first quarter. Heard an MVP chant for Paul George, and he drives to the hole and finishes.
Donovan summed it up. You got to find the right combinations here, especially a game like tonight. You got to get your own energy. Not a lot of people in here. As you see, Paul George just played. He's averaging 17 field goals a game. Just not forcing it.
Attempts range. But with Paul George having the kind of year he's having, it's a new formula here, and right on cue. Lead in that first quarter, and a save by Adams. George up ahead, throws it down. Paulson too long on the three, gets his own. Now Paul George on the attack. George gives it up. There is Noel.
Nice drive and way to feed. Noel doesn't. He knows what he can and can't do.
Another turnover. Now it's George this time, and Paul George with a layup. So right out of the timeout, it's Westbrook. Then it's George. Nerlens Noel hits a Ferguson. That was deflected. Shot clock at 7. Paul George, no. Noel with the offensive rebound. And George hangs and finish. By the way, Russell Westbrook is an assist away from his 11th straight triple-double. There's 2 more from the baseline. 38 points for Westbrook. 10 rebounds, 9 assists. Paul George hits it. Ferguson gives it up. Good ball movement. George for 3. Got it.
He said, I knew I'd make one.
Another deflection by the Thunder. George going 1-on-3. Gets rid of O'Neal and scores.
So I'm pretty sure there's some other guys that hated that trade too, Dave.
Here's Paul George for 3. On the money as he swished. George gets free. That's the last guy you want to leave alone. George, great step through. George able to finish third. 1 of 1 at the free throw line. Paul George as good as any scorer off the dribble in the league. Breaks down Gobert, and what an incredible finish with the left hand off the window.
Just look at Paul George right here. Just in his bag, slicing up the defense. Nice split of the pick and roll. And
George pulls up for 3. Buries it. 8 straight points for OKC. Meanwhile, Westbrook and Paul George have combined for 31, make that 34 of the 42. The final frame. George drives and finishes for his 30th point. Paul George knew he missed it right away. Got his own miss.
Gobert who created the opportunity right there.
George comes back down and now has 34. And they do a steal by Grant. Numbers. George the lob. Ferguson the finish. And they trail by 3 with 90 seconds to go. Mitchell guarding Westbrook. Shot clock at 8. George gets Mitchell off his feet and ties the game with a 3. Hard screen by Adams. George drives at Gobert and finishes for his 30. It ends up being Thunderball anyway, and a breakaway for George. And a stop!
How about that overtime game? 3 minutes left. Down 2, and you go with a windmill situation against a great player.
Ties a season high with 38. Mitchell. George double clutches as he nails the 5th. And the Thunder, down 1, have a timeout. They're not going to use it. George with 5. George drives over Gobert. It's good with 8/10 of a second left to give the Thunder a 1-point lead. Timeout, Utah.
And that's why you don't call a foul, right? Not a foul, but a timeout, right?
To fall. And I'm interested to see this matchup because that would look personal. That looked like he had for MVP. 9-0 run here in the first quarter for the Thunder. We'll be back.
His offense to get his shot, and that's one way is to get out in transition down that three.
Now we're in the midst of an 8-0 run by Denver. Good cut there by Paul George, and he really bailed Russell Westbrook out. And George bails him out. 1-3 quickly into the front court. And just like that, the Stars. Paul George gets one to go there off the outworks Torrey Craig there for the rebound, and then knocks down the triple. And another steal by Paul George. And he's in.
They'll go to Portland, the Clippers, and the Jazz on this trip. Scored the last 8 for the Timberwolves. Loses the basketball, kicks it out. Paul George gets it away.
We've heard some of these people talk about
Charles Barkley.
Jeff Van.
Paul George.
Some people aren't aware of that rule, though. Is